I've been working on my shop for a few days, cleaning it up. Kind of let it get into a mess. I cleaned it up last spring, had it straightened up last spring, and ready to go for the season. But then through the year, it just like we have too many projects going on, and we just never put anything away when we're done. Could barely walk in here. I've got it fairly well straightened out. I still got to sweep it up again now because I made a mess with what I'm doing now. But anyway, you can get in and out of here now. The shop, we built it almost 20 years ago. It's a timber frame building. It's 6x6 frame and 4x6 rafters on 2-foot centers up there. And then the floor is 2x12s. Everything here was milled with a chainsaw mill out of trees that were standing here on the spot pretty much. The building is 12 feet wide and 16 feet long. It was originally open. We put boards across the roof up there on top of the 4x6s, flitches basically. They weren't edged, they were just 1-inch wide boards, or 1-inch thick boards of different widths and stuff. And then had a blue tarp on top of that, and then black visqueen on top of that, which the blue tarp gives it some strength, and the visqueen, then the snow and everything slides off of it, and it gets a little bit of solar gain on it, so the snow slides off. And it had visqueen on the walls on the outside, so I built this to be a closed area for my son to sandblast his pickup and to work on it. He had a little S10 pickup that he bought that was pretty well rusted out, that needed a lot of work, and I built it for him to work on it. And then he got too busy with school stuff, wrestling and basketball and track and swimming and all of those things, that and in the summertime he worked, and he didn't have time to finish it. So I eventually made this into my shop, put plywood up on the inside, cut boards for the outside for siding. It's got 6 inches insulation in the walls, 4 inches of styrofoam in the ceiling there that we salvaged out of a building in town that was being remodeled. The cabinets down here and up there, the upper cabinets and the lower cabinets were salvaged out of a building in town that was being remodeled. That shelf over there I built before I got the rest of these. That's one by boards, again, that were milled here on the property. And then we've got these brackets there to hold them up that were fabricated out of 3/8-inch plywood and boards that were here. Oh, this one over here is looks like it's 1/2-inch plywood. So whatever scraps I had on hand is what I made it out of. Air compressor in here, and this set of parts bins I got on sale from a guy that was moving out of town for, I think I got this one in the shelf over here on the other end for about 10 bucks. Wood stove was given to me by a neighbor, and we just just replaced all of the pipe in it and the heatilator, the stack rubber there. That got rusted out and burned out, so we just replaced it. And more of the bookshelves there with more manuals and reference books, both sides. Some parts for airplanes and chainsaws and power wagons and whatever else is up there. It's my sandblasting cabinet. I've used the heck out of it. It was made out of it's out of 1/4-inch plywood and OSB that I salvaged out of some shipping crates that we had. Something was shipped in, I don't remember what now. There's the other cabinet that's just a shelf unit there, and it needs to be straightened out still. I need to go through it. Drill press and the rollaway cabinet I built for it. New rollaway chest that we bought here a couple of years ago from Harbor Freight, and I've just gradually been moving my stuff out of my old. See, I've got this. It's a pretty nice unit still. I've had that for 40 years. That's a Craftsman rollaway. And the ones behind it are, they come out of True Value or something. Got those when I built this and to keep the tools in and stuff, but they're not holding up quite as well. I just about got the Craftsman one cleaned out, and then we'll take it up to the basement where we're setting up a shop in there for working on the airplane fuselage. I made a little holder here for my sockets and stuff in here. That's a 1/4 inch and 3/8 inch. And a 1/2 inch sockets. We got some wrenches there. Those are all met wrench ratchet ends on them. And that's metric. That side, we've got SAE in this one. And then nut drivers here. This one's a little bit of a mess yet. That one I've got my lathe stuff in it right now and machining stuff in there, but I've still got to have a place to store that other stuff while I'm cleaning up this. This cabinet here is it's just built with 1-bys and perforated hardboard, and that I may have made a mistake when I mounted that my earplug box on there. I got it a little bit too high, so that cabinet doesn't open all of the way, but this one here opens, but it's just because this rollaway is in the way right now. Now I've got a 6-inch grinder. That's a Grizzly grinder on that end, and then on this end I had a vise. Well, I took it off so I could clean up the tabletop. The bench is a 3/4 inch piece of plywood with a 1/4 inch piece of I call it masonite, tempered hardboard on top of it that was glued on, and then I painted over it with porch and deck paint, which is real good paint for a bench top. But what happened here, you can see all these little divots and dips in here, is it gets scratches and marks through the paint and into the hardboard, then moisture gets down in there and it causes it to swell up, puff up, and get soft. So it had some pretty good holes and stuff in here, and so I just spent the last couple days cleaning that up. I used a chisel to go across it and take off all the high spots where it was blistered up and clean out the bottom of these pits and stuff, these holes where there was soft material in it. And then I mixed up some fiberglass. I use this West system because I'm chemical sensitive to regular fiberglass resin. So we use this resin. This is the hardener and the resin, and it works really good with these pumps in it, because the pumps are calibrated so that one pump of the resin and one pump of the hardener are the right ratio. So we did that. I mixed that up in a plastic tub, and then I took some this is yellow cedar, but this is sawdust from off the sawmill that I mixed in for filler into the resin, and I filled up all those holes with the resin and let it cure. And I took a Surform tool here and shaved it all down to where it's close to being flush. And this is the shavings here. This is the combination of resin with the sawdust that got shaved off. Now I've got most of it down pretty good. You can't get all the stuff off, so I'll take a sander and sand it down, smooth it out, and then repaint it with porch and deck paint. And I'm not gonna, this gauge here, guide here, is for laying out, measuring out chainsaw chain. When you make up a new chain, you can just, there's a nail down there in that end. You just took one end of the chainsaw roll on it and unroll it out here, laying the chain on these, and they're calibrated for different sizes of chain. This is 1/4 inch, and you got 325, 3/8, 404, and 1/2 inch, and they're numbered with the number of drive links, so you don't have to count the drive links there when you're cutting a new chain. This fiberglass with the it worked out really good in here. Fills those holes real nice, and it didn't leave any depressions. Of course, it was mounted up pretty good on here in these holes and then shaved down, but it doesn't dry, leaving a depression like body putty or some of the other stuff you might use. And it's hard, and then with that sawdust in it, it makes it pretty hard. So we'll sand it down and repaint it, and it'll be just like new and make a good work surface again. Got the first coat of paint on. It's about, well, 2 a.m. I just come out to put some wood in the stove to keep it warm in here. Put the first coat of paint on about 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock p.m. I guess, something like that. It's still tacky. It's still soft. It's not, doesn't take a fingerprint, but it's still soft. And see, it didn't cover. It's a nice thick coat. It's nice and shiny, but it hasn't covered all of the little spots and stuff on there yet. So we'll let this cure overnight and put another coat on it tomorrow after it's dried a little bit more. Well, here's the bench top after the second coat of porch and deck paint. Looks pretty good. It's got a few wrinkles in it and stuff. Its paint is pretty thick. I put it on with a brush. It probably would have been better with a roller. And it doesn't really say what to thin it out with. So, but it went on pretty good, and it covered mostly. There's still a little bit of color showing through from this repair here. But all in all, it's looks a heck of a lot better than it did. Got a nice flat surface again. It's still a little soft to the touch, but it's not tacky. You can't put a fingerprint in it. It's been I don't know, 4 or 5 hours since I did it. I thought about pulling all my tools down and stuff and repainting that backboard, but I'm not going to do that. It's just everything is good enough the way it is for a shop. I'll let that dry for all day tomorrow, and then the next day I can put the vise back on and the grinder back on. The table looks really good now. Not as good as it did when I first built it by any means, but it's a lot better. It's got nice white surface on it that'll be relatively hard when it's done. It's nice and flat for working on things, and this white paint reflects light, so it helps lighten up the shop, but it also reflects light back up on things that you're working on, so you're not looking into a dark surface with the light from behind you. It kind of reflects light and makes the work surface or whatever you're working on easier to see. You don't have as many shadows or many hidden spots in it. And then when you drop things on it, springs or little screws or something like that happen to drop on it, they're easy to find on a light surface like this, a lot more so than a wooden surface or a dark surface. Geez, maybe I should paint the whole floor that way, because sometimes things fall down on the floor and they're kind of hard to find. Well, we got the bench all done now. It's all painted, and I've been working on it. Actually, I took in the grinder off and I just remounted it. I got a piece of stainless steel and put underneath it, so that's nicer for the swarf and the crap that comes off the grinding wheel. It's just sitting on there. I put it on when the paint was still a little bit tacky, so that maybe it would stick down, and it's just held down with the bolts that hold the grinder down. And then I put a new vise on. This is a different vise than the one I've had for years on there. The other one, I kind of sprung it a little bit. It still worked fine, but the jaws didn't close up tight even on it, because I kind of sprung it trying to press the bearings out of a couple of things here. So anyway, this vise is a little bit different footprint than the other one, so I mixed up some more fiberglass resin with sawdust and filled those holes, and then made new holes for it, and had to watch it. I got the pattern set, or got it set close to the front edge so that when I have the jaws open here towards the front, I can put a long piece of stock down and it'll clear the bench on this side. But I had to keep it farther away from this corner when this vise turns, and I had to keep it farther away from this corner because the bolts wouldn't have been able to go through because of this bench. This bolt head here in the front rubs a little bit on that drawer, but that's not too bad. No, I took these big washers. They're big steel. Well, they're not, huge. They're, what are they, 3-inch square. And they're pieces I cut off with some angle iron to match them up when I was welding up a frame for a rack for the pickup last winter that I used when we went to pick up the airframe in Anchorage. I put it on the pickup to carry it home. So I just drilled those out 1/2 inch and drilled 1/2 inch holes in the tabletop and then put 7/16 inch bolts in them. But those give a nice bearing surface on that so that it doesn't pull into the wood. And then I put a piece of stainless steel, just a piece of, I don't know what that is, 16 gauge or something like that, stainless underneath the vise, and that'll help keep the vise from pulling into the wood. It kind of sunk in there a little bit before, but do a lot of sawing on here and sometimes a little bit of welding or something, and so that'll keep the slag and stuff from getting into the burning holes in the tabletop and gives it a nice firm base. Anyway, now what I'm doing, organizing or cleaning up my drill bits, and this little shelf here, container here, I had in my drawer over here for my drill stand, and it was kind of in there in that top drawer. It was kind of a catch-all for all my loose bits, and I was digging out some reamers. I've got some 1/4 inch tubing that I've got to make some bushings out of, and I needed a reamer to ream out the tubing to the size for the bolt to go through the bushings, and I was going to buy some. I've got a reamer, 3/16 inch reamer that I was putting in there, but it was having a tough time going through that stainless. So I was going to buy some, and I got to thinking I bought a bunch of reamers years ago at Boeing Surplus, so I went through them and I was able to find several of them here that'll work for reaming that out for the 3/16 for the inside of those bushings. So anyway, all the stuff has been just pulled out of there and thrown back in helter-skelter over the last couple of years, so it's getting to be kind of a mess. I figured I better get it straightened out, and I drug my drill doctor out, so some of these bits need to be sharpened again. So I'll get the drill doctor out and I'll sharpen the bits up. These are my indexes here, and they're kind of the same way. They've been people that have used them haven't put everything back the way they should have, and it's not me. I've generally put my drill bits back, but there's several other people that use the shop and they haven't been quite as good at putting the bits back where they go. So I'll try to get those organized now and get everything put away.